Welcome, infrastructure admins. Today, we're jumping straight into a really specific, super high-yield topic for your Nutanix certification. We are talking about NCP-MCI 7.5, 12.6 Cross-Hypervisor DR, CHDR. I'm going to walk you through exactly what you need to know to absolutely crush this section of the exam. We're taking it at a nice, steady pace today, zooming in purely on the mechanics, the hard rules, and, those sneaky edge cases that exam writers just love to throw at you. All right, let's get into this explainer. Here's our game plan for today. First, why CHDR matters. Then, detailed CHDR walkthroughs. After that, exam traps and edge cases. And finally, key facts to memorize. Section 1, why CHDR actually matters. Let's lay down the core concepts. So what exactly is Cross-Hypervisor Disaster Recovery, or CHDR for short? Well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's this incredibly useful capability that lets you migrate your virtual machines directly from one hypervisor over to a completely different one. Specifically, we're talking about taking VMs from VMware ESXi over to Nutanix AHV, or going the other way around from AHV back to ESXi. And the way it pulls this off is by using standard protection domain semantics. Basically, it takes snapshots, replicates those snapshots to your remote cluster, and then spins the VMs up from them. It's honestly a huge deal for hybrid setups because it gives you this completely seamless failover ability across totally different hypervisor environments. Now, you can't just flip a magic switch and make this work. There are some absolute hard and fast infrastructure requirements you've got to commit to memory. First up, Nutanix Guest Tools, or NGT. It absolutely must be installed and configured on every single source VM. Why? Well, NGT is what injects the VM with all the necessary drivers to actually survive that jump between hypervisors. If you don't have NGT installed, CHDR literally will not happen. On top of that, your setup is strictly capped at a maximum of 2 different Nutanix clusters. Now, those 2 clusters can be sitting right next to each other on the same availability zone, or AZ, or they can be out in completely different AZs, but you absolutely cannot stretch a CHDR setup across 3 or 4 clusters. 2 is the hard limit. Section 2, detailed CHDR walkthroughs. Let's actually see these scenarios in action. Okay, I want to take a deliberate pause right here because understanding replication schedules is absolutely critical. This is a massive exam rule. You've got to know exactly which schedules are actually supported. So, asynchronous replication, the one that targets a recovery point objective, or RPO, of an hour or more, that's fully supported. NearSync, giving you those tight 1 to 15 minute RPOs, also totally supported. But synchronous replication, the one giving you that 0 RPO, absolutely not. No way. Synchronous replication is strictly for disaster recovery between clusters running the exact same hypervisor. So if you try to mix different hypervisors while using a synchronous schedule, your whole design is going to fail instantly. Keep that in mind. Let's walk through a real-world scenario. Imagine you're failing over your on-prem ESXi environment into a Nutanix Cloud AZ that's running AHV. The basic steps are pretty straightforward. You replicate your VM snapshots using either an async or NearSync schedule, and then you simply recover those VMs on the target AHV cluster. Simple enough, right? Well, here is the quirky little detail the exam is going to test you on. When you do a CHDR migration from ESXi to AHV, it actually drops the DNS configurations of your Windows VMs. They just don't carry over. So once the failover is done, you're going to have to go in and manually reconfigure those Windows DNS entries. Or if you want to be a pro about it, you can use an ingest script inside your recovery plan to automate the whole thing. Now for our second scenario, let's flip it. Let's say you're recovering VMs from AHV back onto an ESXi hypervisor. This scenario perfectly highlights some of the funny networking quirks between the 2 platforms. When your VMs wake up on the ESXi side, by default they're going to attach using an older, slower E1000 NIC. It just falls back to that. If you actually want those VMs to boot up with the high-performance VMXNet NIC attached, you have to ensure VMware Tools is already installed on those guest VMs. Otherwise, you're stuck on the default E1000. I actually pulled a direct quote right out of the official Nutanix DRaaS guide for this next point, because it's just that important. It explicitly states that static IP address preservation is not supported for CHDR workflows. So what does that mean for you? It means if your VM has a static IP locked in at your primary site, you're going to be doing some manual typing. CHDR will not drag that static IP across the finish line for you. You have to manually reconfigure the VM's IP address once it lands on the target site. Section 3, Exam Traps and Edge Cases. Welcome to the minefield. Here's exactly what not to do. When a system performs a cross-hypervisor migration, it basically has to normalize the virtual machine. Because of that, CHDR deliberately strips out a bunch of hypervisor-specific baggage. You're going to lose multi-writer flags, independent persistent disks, independent non-persistent disks, changed block tracking, and PVS-CSI disk configurations. If your VM relies on any of those properties, they are gone upon recovery. You definitely need to know this list for the test. Pay super close attention to this next one because it is a classic sneaky exam trap. What do you think happens if you try to use CHDR on an encrypted ESXi VM and you're targeting AHV? Well, the system will actually trick you. It's going to successfully take the recovery points, and it will even go ahead and replicate the guest VM. It looks like it's working, but the second you actually try to perform the DR, that VM will flat out refuse to start up on the recovery cluster. So bottom line, encrypted ESXi VMs are a hard no for CHDR to HV. Let's talk about UEFI and secure boot for a minute. Generally speaking, Nutanix does support CHDR migrations for VMs using UEFI and Secure Boot, but there are three very specific combos that will absolutely break your recovery. First, if your VM has hardware virtualization combined with Secure Boot, it's going to fail. Second, if you're running Microsoft Windows Defender Credential Guard, it cannot be recovered. And third, if your VM is sitting on ESXi using IDE disks or a CD-ROM combined with Secure Boot, it will definitely fail to recover on AHV. Make sure you group those three exclusions together in your head. While we're still on the topic of UEFI limitations, there are three specific legacy operating systems you need to memorize. We're talking CentOS 7.4, CentOS 7.5, and Ubuntu 16.04. If you're running any of those three as a UEFI virtual machine, they are going to outright fail to boot after a cross-hypervisor migration. Just file those three specific versions right into your memory bank because they are prime exam material. Section 4. Key facts to memorize. We're in the home stretch, so let's do a rapid-fire review. 2. That's it, just 2. That is the absolute maximum number of different Nutanix clusters you are allowed to have in a single CHDR setup. It doesn't matter if they are sitting in the exact same AZ, or if you've got one on-prem and the other way out in a Nutanix Cloud AZ. You simply cannot exceed 2 clusters in this specific disaster recovery arrangement. You also have to know the absolute baseline software minimums for CHDR to even function. Now, I know your exam focuses heavily on AOS 7.5, but they will test you on where this feature officially started. You need a bare minimum of AOS 5.19.1, Prism Central version PC.2021.1, and crucially, Nutanix Guest Tools version 2.1.1. And let me say it one more time just to be absolutely sure. NGT has to be installed on every single VM you plan to migrate. I want to wrap up this explainer with a quick question just to test your retention. Imagine you're designing a disaster recovery plan right now, and the requirement is to move VMs between ESXi and AHV. Which replication schedule is going to instantly fail your entire design? Think about it. If you said synchronous replication, you hit the nail right on the head. Remember, you have to stick to asynchronous or NearSync for cross-hypervisor failovers. Honestly, if you study these edge cases, memorize those NGT and manual IP requirements, you're going to do fantastic. Good luck out there on your NCP-MCI exam.